So what we're going to do now is clean up the motion of this modifier. What we need to do is bring up a track view. So we're going to open a track view, and here we have it here. If we just scroll down the list here, we can see a list of objects. So we pop down the list of objects, we can see our D1. We pop down the list here. Okay, we have transforms. So we pop down the transforms. There we have position, rotation and scale, which we haven't touched, unlike the ball where we did scale and position. In a few minutes we are going to change position as well. And then we've got modified objects, and in here you can actually see the stretch modifier. So if we pop that down, you can see gizmo. So here we can see the time frame of what's going on by just changing from the functional curve to the positional range. So what I'm going to do is go back to the functional curve, and I'm going to pop that down. Alright, so here we can see the stretch amount, and just turn that to functional curve on stretch. Okay, here we can see the problem. This bit of the curve here is when the die flattens itself out before the beginning frames. So what we need to do is change how the in and out curves are working on the out curve on the beginning and the in curve on the first instance where the die starts to move. So to do that, we highlight the point that we want to manipulate first, and we right click on it. What we have here is what's called some curve modifiers. So what I want to do is go to the out curve and set it to square. It's a square wave instead of a curved wave. And here you can see it's flattened out. So from there, I can now close my track view. That's really the basics of what we had to do here. If I now play it, you can see it doesn't do anything now until when I want it to. So when I want it to, it starts to jump up and down. It's all happening a bit fast, and we may need to manipulate the time frame of what's happening here. So we can click on the time configuration and say my end frame can be at frame 80. So effectively I've doubled my time. So all I got to do now is drag these animation points from the time scale to a more relevant point, maybe stretch them out a bit, make them a bit further apart. I could also do this in the track view, but doing it here isn't going to hurt. Alright, so at this point, when the die is at full stretch, I want it to be leaving the table. So I don't want it to be leaving the table at full stretch, I want it to be leaving the table before full stretch. So I actually want it to be leaving the table here. So what I'm going to do, and this is to keep the die to stay still, is I'm going to click animate here. I've got my move on. I'm going to make sure that the Z is active, and I'm going to go here, I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to go here. And at this point I actually want the die to start leaving the table, but what I've grabbed there is the gizmo. So now I've got the die and it's moving around in the XY. We want it to move around in the Z, so then we just move it around in the Z. And by this frame I want it to be here. Okay, we're going to have a problem where the die is going to drop below the table, and that's because of this key here. What we need to do at this key is actually edit its position. And we can do that with the track view. So here if we go to D1, we go stay on functional curve and we go to position, here we can see what's happening. Alright, so what we want to do is grab this die here and set its elevation to whatever the tabletop is. And we can get that from here. So here we can see this is where the die starts and it's at the right height, so we can take that Z value and we can transplant it to this key here. We still have the problem with the functional curve where it's still going to drop below the table because the functional curve is set to be smooth. So what we need to do is go to the first key and give it a square frame or a square wave again, and there we can see that the die is now level on the table. I press play, it's going to stay on the table, it's going to start jumping around and jump off. So it jumps off the table. Alright, next thing I want to do is I don't want the die to stay that elongated shape, because once it's left the table it's expended its energy. I want it to start leveling out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the animate button again, and by about here I'm going to set it back to 0. So we press play and we watch what's happening, and off it goes. Okay, it's not jumping high enough off the table by frame 60, so what we're going to do is open the track view once again, go to where that key that controls the elevation for the die at frame 60, which is this key here. It's on the blue curve because we know that the blue curve represents the Z value, and you can see that in the little triad thing it has here. It tells you what colour the curves are going to be. So the Z is the blue. And I can take that and I can just drag it up. And now you can see it's disappeared fully off the screen. So now if I press play, it jumps off the table. So that's just a quick animation using the very basic animation technique, which would be to click animate, move an object, click animate, and then to use the parametric modifiers to animate, or it's what's called sub-object animation. And it's a very simple technique, and you can do it with any of the parametric modifiers, from bend, twist, stretch like we just did, and so on. You can have quite a lot of fun with it, and it's worth playing with. Have fun with it.